Okay, I think maybe we can get started so that we don't run too far behind the schedule. So welcome everybody to the second Slovenian American Virtual Academic Symposium. My name is Andrej Košmarov, and I'll be moderating this symposium. And so this symposium is jointly organized between the U.S. Embassy in Ljubljana and the ASEF, American-Slovenian Education Foundation. So here I also represent both the ASEF and I'm originally also, otherwise besides ASEF, I'm an assistant professor at Princeton University, and I'm also working on establishing collaborations between Slovenia and US, which is the primary goal of the symposium. So we're going to start with the brief opening remarks that will be given by representative of the US Embassy of Ljubljana, the Slovenian Embassy in US, the ASEF, and then I will also say a few words with respect to the Slovenian Research Agency. So with this, I will just first give the word to Brian Street from the US Embassy of Ljubljana.
You have to unmute.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't hear your voice, Brian.
That better?
That's good. Yeah.
Better sound, worse camera. Good evening and morning to everyone. I'm so thrilled to join you all for our second installment of the Slovenian American Virtual Academic Symposium. The U.S. Embassy, of course, is privileged to partner with this new initiative, and my heartfelt thanks go out once again to Andre, Barbara, Yuri, and the rest of the ASEF team for making our crazy brainchild from nearly a year ago into a living, breathing reality. A special thank you as well to Ambassador Kaiser for joining us from Washington. I'm sure he wishes he could be with us in the pleasant Ljubljana summer as the hot weather descends on DC for the next few months, but we appreciate you being with us virtually. I'm sad to say I'll be leaving Slovenia in just a few weeks after nearly 3 years of service in this beautiful country. In the time that I've been here, I've come to know and appreciate everything that Slovenia has to offer, from the majesty of its mountains, the deep green of its valleys, and the startling blue of its lakes and rivers. To the inspiring churches of its castles, inspiring history of its castles, churches, and natural wonders. But more than any of these, what I've come to appreciate most is the Slovenian people. They're kind, welcoming, ambitious, and like Americans, they're motivated to create a new and exciting world for their children. And they work tirelessly to see that world come to be. From the academic world to the business community, innovation isn't just a buzzword in Slovenia, it's a way of life. And that's what makes this project so exciting. I'll admit that in creating this project, we sought to take advantage of this COVID reality, right? We were all stuck in front of computers anyway, so why not pitch a new way of engaging that opened a cost-effective and efficient pathway to collaboration? Why not use this new dynamic of virtual relationship building to our advantage? So today our hope is that you'll all find new friends, motivated partners, and potential projects that can unite Slovenians and Americans in that search for a better future. That you'll find ways to share research, meet new people, meet new classes, and new students, realize new objectives, and bring our two nations closer through the common pursuit of knowledge. I know that Ambassador Kaiser would agree when I say that while he and I may have diplomat on our business cards, the most valuable and effective diplomacy for uniting our nations happens between people like you. People who exemplify the shared values that unite us and work every day to strengthen the cooperation that has made Slovenia and the United States such strong allies for the last 30 years. Thank you all for participating, and I look forward to seeing the amazing outcomes from the partnerships you built today. Thanks again.
Brian, so now I'll give the word to Ambassador Tone Kaiser.
Thank you, and very good morning from Washington. I'm actually happy to be here. I'm also happy when I'm back to Slovenia, but I'm happy to be here because I can see all the challenges and opportunities in front of me as a newly appointed ambassador to the United States. I'm working here for last 5 months. I came in the beginning of January. This COVID was still pressing, and now the things are opening up. And first of all, I have to congratulate our American allies for being so effective to deal with this vaccination. I have visited yesterday, as Brian said, and I think this is very important to say on behalf of the diplomats, we are not and we should not be bureaucrats. We have to go out. US has 50 states, and I intend to visit every and each of them. to create new connections and to deepen the already existing cooperation between US and Slovenia. And in this regard, ASEF, and I have to say I'm honored and privileged to be a member of the board, and I will work very hard for the mission and for the goals of ASEF, which is in a total compliance with the overall goals of our two countries to actually strengthen and deepen the cooperation. And during our presidency, now incoming presidency, we have already agreed that we are going to host at least one or two events here at our embassy and also around the United States. So the things are now opening up, and I just came yesterday. I was visiting Fort Drum in the northern, in the new state of New York. I have established really great new connections with the American military. Talking about military, somebody would say, what does that have to do with education? It does, because we are all working together to advance as partners and allies. And we have seen now that maybe somebody would say things are going very well, but behind the scenes there is a fierce race or a competition, I would say, between the Western world, the Western civilization, and some other partners, or I may say stakeholders at the global level, to maybe enforce their own values. And regarding this, we have to work together. During the Slovenian presidency, we have really a great opportunity to advance, because now US-EU summit is incoming. In just a few days, there will be a summit in Brussels, and one of the very important parts will be also so-called Trade and Technology Council, which is linked to education, which is linked to the advancement and progress in the field of digital cybersecurity, so on and so forth. So I'm really honored and privileged, and the whole team here in the United States, our embassy, is working for this goal. I wish you to have a really productive discussion today. I will be joining you as much as possible, because I have some other meetings already now. The business is opening up, and I'm really looking forward to work with all of you. Sending best regards to all the participants. And of course, I have to say at the end, the door here at our embassy in the United States, it's always open for you. Thank you.
You did, Andre.
Ambassador Kaiser. Now I'm going to try to give the floor to Mr. Tom Brandy, who's representing ASEF, if we can get him. There were some technical issues. Tom, can you try to speak via your computer? And if not, we're going to maybe try to do it over your phone.
Well, I have the phone in my ear, so we're probably getting feedback.
Yeah. Okay. So can we maybe can you try to Tom, can you try to speak via your computer, like your microphone is on? I apologize for these technical issues. We've tested this before and it was working. So let's see if we can get Mr. Tom Brandy on the call. In the meantime, I'll also say that unfortunately, like Miss Lydia Teacher-Padar from the Slovenian Research Agency also had some technical issues and was not able to join us. But she also, sends, her greetings to everybody who's with us today, and also she's also emphasized there is a very strong support from the Slovenian Research Agency to establish such collaborations, and we're also going to mention some of the support mechanisms that Slovenian Research Agency is providing to try to encourage such promotions. Let's see if we can. Okay, let me call Mr. Brandon. Maybe we can at least try to send his regards via a phone. Hi, Tom. Won't be able to secure this Tom's Brandy's call via computer, but I'm going to try to transmit the phone call, and maybe we can see if this is going to work. So Tom, why don't you go ahead and say a few remarks?
Good morning, everyone. This is Tom Brandy in San Francisco, and I apologize for the computer issues. This worked perfectly 3 times yesterday, and this morning it's 0 for 3. I'd just like, on behalf of ASEF, to thank all of you for the opportunity to make a few remarks and share with you the story of ASEF. The American-Slovenian Education Foundation was started 7 years ago by 2 brilliant young Slovene graduate students, Jure Leskovic, who was a young professor at Stanford at the time in computer science, and is still a young professor at Stanford, and Peter Rosic, a Jesuit priest who was a PhD student at Georgetown. And they had a vision, and their vision was all of the brilliant young Slovene students have an opportunity to work with some of the best professors in the world, share, collaborate, learn, interact, and take that knowledge and the network of relationships back to Slovenia and build on it. And it started with 3 Slovene students coming to 3 universities: University of California here in San Francisco, University of California, Berkeley, Stanford, and Santa Clara. And from that, in 7 years, it has blossomed to 99 Slovene students coming to universities in California, in the United States, in Canada, in England, and throughout the world. 29 students from the United States and elsewhere have gone to work in Slovenia. From that has come great collaboration, great learning, and great benefits. The students have collaborated with their professors. Some of the students, Marinka's on this call, have gone on. She was in our initial class. She's gone on to become a professor at Harvard. Many of the students have published papers with their mentors, have created relationships, and expanded their knowledge, and served as a platform to enhance not only Slovenian science, but Slovenian culture and Slovenia throughout the world. If you want more information on us, please go to www.asef.org. See if maybe there's someone in your family or friend circle that might want to participate in a program. And thank you very much for the opportunity to be today. I apologize for the problems technically. I wish everyone well.
Thank you very much, Tom. And I hope that the audio was able to come through via our phone. We apologize for these technical difficulties, and thank you again, Tom, and everybody for these wonderful opening remarks, which hopefully will stimulate further discussions. So now let's move on with the program, and we're going to start with the first keynote presentation that will be given by Mrs. Erika Johnson Debeljak, who's an established American-Slovenian writer and translator. And now I would like to invite Mrs. Erika to join us on stage. And then I will just explain now how you can, convey your questions for Erika during the talk. So if you would like to ask a question, so I'll be moderating this, please use the chat option. So on the right of your screen, you should see this bubble, and that's where the chat is. And then, please use the public chat for everyone. So, if you would like to send a message, just type, go to the chat for everyone, type your message at the bottom of the screen and click send. And I'll be moderating this discussion, the discussion with Erika after her brief presentation. Well, she will tell us about her life story and how she, established connections between America and Slovenia. So, Erika, with this, I will give the floor to you.
Okay, first I'm going to ask if you can hear me.
I hear you very well.
Okay, so good afternoon and good morning to those of you joining from the United States, especially California. It's really early. And first of all, I would like to thank you for the opportunity to speak here tonight. About a month ago, I received an email from Andre, who is an aerospace engineer at Princeton University, inviting me to be a keynote speaker for this online symposium, the theme being highly successful collaborations between America and Slovenia. I have to admit, I was kind of surprised by the invitation. It's not every day I get a mail from an aerospace engineer from Princeton, no less. And I thought it might be some kind of mistake. And another reason for my surprise was that I wasn't really sure I belonged in this company. ASEF is an organization of academics. Most of the people listening today have a career in academia. Many, if not all, have an advanced degree and are leading experts in their fields. I do not entirely share this profile. It is true that I combine Slovenian and American identities, but looking back over my life and career, I have been much more of a dilettante, like a honeybee hopping from flower to flower and never staying at one long enough to develop a really become a leading expert in the field. But in any case, as a young woman in San Francisco, where ASEF is based, I wanted to be a dancer. Then I decided I wasn't going to make it, and I moved to New York for my studies and eventually became a banker on Wall Street there. And then a little while later, I ended up in Slovenia, a tiny newborn country, as a translator and eventually a writer. I've earned a lot of academic degrees over my life, but they're not at all connected to each other. I have a degree in French literature from Columbia, Master of Business and International Finance from NYU. Later, when I moved to Slovenia, I got an MFA from the University of New Orleans, a low residency MFA. And today, I am still enrolled in school. I'm at the Zrcazu Podiplomska Škola, doing a doctoral program in their literary module. Another reason why I was surprised by the invitation was simply the idea that I could be an appropriate person to give an inspirational talk on this subject. Because to be honest, I really don't consider myself to be a representative of a highly successful Slovenian-American collaboration. Because for me, if I look at the word collaboration, I think it's co, which means together, and lovare, which means work. And for me, it suggests a certain level of reciprocity or mutuality, some kind of two-way street. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today, not about success, but about failure. And I decided to do this kind of after I looked at your website, because it's such a upbeat website. It's kind of, I perversely decided to call my paper Failed Collaborations and the Horizons of Expectations. Because I want to look at collaboration and collaborative situations and ask why some fail and some succeed. And more to the point, perhaps in this company, why some directions of collaborations fail and some succeed. I will do this in part by connecting the notion of collaboration and collaborative situations to narrative and stories. Maybe this is a professional deformation of mine as a writer. And I also will connect it to the question of receptivity and the horizon of expectations. That is how prepared a given society or the social tissue in general is to accept or understand certain narrative stories. This kind of comprehension or acceptance, and sometimes it's really just recognition and seeing, makes it easier for collaboration to take place. And the lack of it can sometimes make collaboration all but impossible. So what I'm doing is connecting types of narratives to types of collaboration. And finally, I think, especially for this group, it is interesting to connect this to movement and to migration, to conceive of movement and migration as a form of narrative, where some stories and some migration patterns are known and accepted and others are not. So migration is something that has certainly had a decisive impact on my life, and I imagine it has on many of your lives as you move between Slovenia and America. Some of you have not lived in your homeland for most of your adult lives. You may speak a different language than your native tongue in most settings, including with your family if your children or spouse haven't mastered Slovenian. And in such cases, you may raise your children, or you definitely raise your children far from your own parents in the places where you grew up. And I know from my own experience that this kind of life is really interesting and fascinating and challenging, but it also is extremely difficult on many levels. Just on a pragmatic level, it can be difficult, on an emotional level, and also in the simple sense of belonging in a, truly and unquestionable to a collective. Because for people like us who move, especially for like half of one's life or most of one's life, that kind of unquestioning belonging to a tribe, if you like, we don't have it. And that's why it's interesting, but it's also why it can be challenging. Maybe I was being a little bit coy in the beginning when I said I was so surprised to be invited, because I imagine that one of the reasons was that I crossed the radar of Andrei and other organizers was because not only just because I'm American-Slovenian, but also because I published a book earlier this year in Slovenia in February, and it's been highly successful. And I've been in the Slovenian media a lot, so I'm sure that that's why I came to their minds as a person to invite. And I'll tell you a little bit about this recent book and also about my ideas about narrative and collaboration and migration. But before I do so, I'm going to go back up a little bit and tell you how I got to the place where I am now. And I apologize if this seems self-indulgent, but as I said, I'm not really an expert in any external field. Most of my work, and especially my successful work, has been autobiographical. So in a way, my personal life and my career have merged. So I'll try to make a long story short. And I see a few friends. I see Michael Biggins and I see Marianca Vigentin. So I know there are a few people who know my story. I think a lot of you actually don't. So anyway, about 30 years ago, really almost exactly 30 years, in 1991, the year of Slovenia's plebiscite of independence, I was living in New York City working on Wall Street as a financial lender. And when I met my future and now late husband, Aleš Debeljak, at a party in Brooklyn. I met him in September, 3 months after the 10-day war, and I confessed to him at the time that I must not have been reading my New York Times in June because I totally missed the story. I had not heard of Slovenia. I knew very little about Yugoslavia. At the time, Aleš was completing his PhD in social thought at Syracuse University and putting the finishing touches on his dissertation. Aleš had been a wunderkind in his 20s. He was already a successful poet, and he would soon embark on his academic career at the Faculty of Social Work at the University of Ljubljana. I moved to Slovenia in 1993 to marry Aleš. In those early days, I assumed I would continue my financial career in Slovenia, which I assumed needed financial expertise as a transition from a socialist to a market economy. But as it turned out, because of bureaucratic hurdles, of which you're probably familiar, I was not allowed to work in Slovenia. And even after I married Aleš, I didn't have anything like a green card because that doesn't exist in Slovenia. And I couldn't really easily be part of the labor market or function in a lot of other ways as an ordinary Slovenian citizen. And it's just so funny to think back. Because, for example, Slovenia just had gotten an ATM machine, and I wasn't allowed to have an ATM card. I wasn't allowed to buy household, like a washing machine or anything on credit. So I was really kind of limited. But I mean, a lot of that has changed, but I don't think the bureaucratic hurdles have changed so much. But looking back in retrospect, I think there was good fortune in this initially seemingly bad fortune, because it ultimately led to a more fulfilling life. I learned the Slovenian language. I began to work with texts, first editing texts and then translating texts. And eventually I became a writer myself. I found that I loved writing and that I was good at it. And looking back at my life in Slovenia, I really think it would not have been so successful and so fulfilling. And my marriage would not, because I've known a lot of people who've had international marriages, and it's hard for people who come. And it helped that I had such a fulfilling and interesting career that was so new for me and so creative. So early on in those days, I was asked by an editor at Delo if I would write about my experience as as an American coming to Slovenia. So I wrote a feuilleton, which that's like a 10-day column in the newspaper. It was entitled Tujka v hiši domačinov, which means foreigner in the house of natives. And it was extremely successful. It was one of those photocopied feuilletons at the time. And that's kind of funny too, because of course we didn't have the internet or even email back then. And it eventually became a book. I was asked to make it longer. Later, I rewrote this story in more novelistic form or memoir form in the book Prepovedani kruh, which it's forbidden bread, which was also published in America in the original English, and it's still in print today, and it remains popular. When the tourist industry was booming before COVID, a lot of tourists who came to Slovenia would buy it, and also among the diaspora, people, especially second and third generation diaspora, Slovenians who are interested in finding about Slovenia. And this is a very kind of entertaining way to learn about Slovenia because it's really a love story. In the years that followed, I wrote a book about Srečko Kosovel. I wrote two novels and a short story collection. I should emphasize I write in English, and I've also written a lot for columns and things like that, but I always write in English. I'm much more comfortable in English, being creative, and my work is translated into Slovenia. Nevertheless, a little over 10 years ago, I think, the Slovenian Writers Union made a decision that was controversial at the time to accept what they call foreign language writers into the Writers Union if they met certain criteria, which I did. So now I am a member of the Slovenian Writers Union and really officially, in some sense, a Slovenian writer. Coming back, this February, my most recent book came out. It was published by Mladinska knjiga with the Slovenian title, Devica kraljica udova prasica. The title of the book in English, and again, it was written in English, of course, is Virgin Wife, Widow, Whore. The writing of this book was triggered by terrible personal tragedy, the sudden death of my husband in 2016. I tell the story of his death, but the focus of this book is the trauma that followed. And at the center of the book is not the man who died, but the woman who survived. And because of that, I include the stories of iconic widows throughout history, from the Bible, mythology, literature. So the book is both a personal autobiographical account and also an anthropological account of widows throughout history. After being out for only 4 months, it's third print run, and it's sold over 4,000 copies, which in Slovenia is really a phenomenon. So now returning to the title and the theme of my talk, failed collaborations and the horizon of expectations, you might ask why I describe my Slovenian-American collaboration as a failure. It is not, I assure you, because of the tragic end of my marriage. I think it is never wise to judge the success of a collaboration by its ending. But I view my life collaboration between Slovenia and America as only half successful. The establishment of myself as a Slovenian writer and as a public figure here in Slovenia. And half of it is a failure, my failure to establish myself as an English language writer. When people ask me why I consider myself to be a Slovenian writer, and I really do, it is not because of my membership in the Slovenian Writers Union, but because my readership is Slovenian. And my identity as a writer really arises from the readers I have. And my successful Slovenian collaboration, such it is one-sided, because I don't have that identity as an English language writer, and I've had difficulty penetrating the English language market. So this failure, if you want to call it that, it's also true of my newest book, which surprised me because it has not yet found a home in the English language market, and it just surprised me because I have an excellent agent. It's a bestseller here. I think the book is the strongest book I've ever written. It touches on themes that are universal and also are very much of the moment, confronting the taboo of death and grieving, themes of feminism and the amazing strength of women, and finally widowhood in the era of COVID, which because of those who die of it are mostly, at least in the beginning, were mostly middle-aged and older men, has been called the widowmaker. And I have, not only from this book, but also from previous books, I have a huge stack of rejection letters. And they always say the same thing. They say how great the writing is, how great the story is, how compelling everything is, but they just don't know how they could market the book successfully or robustly in the US market. And I used to feel sensitive about it and think, well, maybe I'm not good enough, or maybe I'm not an operator, I don't know how to play the market. But now, in my recent studies of literary theory and what I'm going to talk about today, I also think there's another reason for it. I think in order for a story to fall on a fertile soil, if you want to call it that, or a welcoming readership and market, to reach a receptive readership, it is generally easier if the story and its elements are already present to some degree, that they already have a recognizable pattern or mold. The term horizon of expectations comes from Hans Robert Jauss's reception theory of literature. What Jauss sought to do with this theory was essentially bring in the reader, a hitherto neglected element in literary history, and thus create a three-part triangle between the text, the writer, and the audience. And the horizon of expectation is basically the structure by which the reader or a person comprehends and decodes and appraises any text based on cultural conventions and on a particular historical moment, which is flexible. So this different generations in different places may evaluate or accept a text or a narrative anyway, they might decode a text differently or accept it depending on what generation and where they are. The most obvious example of this is genre literature, where you have like mystery stories or romances that have certain formulas, certain familiar features, a beginning that helps the reader to predict the middle and the ending, and this creates a pleasant sense of anticipation. And I think this notion of genre, or the horizon of expectations, can also be linked to identity in general, and as I said, to patterns of migration. So for example, a very familiar form of identity in terms of exile or direction of migration would be, say, writers and intellectuals, usually men, who emigrated from Europe to America during or after World War II. They became a familiar quantity or identity with familiar features and familiar trajectories. Thomas Mann, for example, or Czesław Miłosz. The Russian immigrant also had with another familiar figure in terms of an exile or a person who migrated. My trajectory from the center to the periphery is a much less familiar direction, and also like writing in English for a Slovenian audience. All of these things make this me as an identity or as a quantity kind of incomprehensible. And if we look at more contemporary autobiographical work, there's been a real memoir boom for like the last 20 years. We can see how previously invisible identities become kind of insert themselves in the social conversation. So you can think of survivors of abuse or addiction. More recently, you can think of transsexuals, identities that were previously invisible or stigmatized, and they begin to push themselves into the social tissue and into the social consciousness, so they will eventually be accepted and recognized. And so now, if I extend this idea to the group of people we have here in this organization, I would say that the narrative of people leaving Slovenia to pursue doctorates and postdocs is a very familiar, well-known narrative. The narrative of return to Slovenia is mostly unfamiliar, and for that and other reasons, may be much more difficult to accomplish. I don't know exactly when, but about 10 years ago, I translated a doctoral thesis by a woman named Alenka Stanic for Nova Gorica. The title of it was Relocation Flow, or the Escape of Research Potential, the Case of Post-Independent Slovenia. In the dissertation, she examines, both statistically and anecdotally, how many Slovenians who achieve advanced degrees or do postdocs and research in foreign countries return. This is, the number is really stark. I think at the time it was like less than 10% managed to return. This is potentially a loss for them personally, if they want to live in Slovenia or have more contact with Slovenia and raise their children here perhaps, but it is definitely a loss for Slovenia in terms of intellectual potential. I was really shocked when I learned that, because my husband, of course, was one of the less than 10%. He really wanted to return to Slovenia. He really wanted to make a contribution to Slovenia. He wanted to teach Slovenian young people, not Americans. He wanted to have an impact on the country of Slovenia that was essentially created 30 years ago. So to look on the bright side, or the potential side, Jaus, in his theory of receptivity, also coined the phrase horizon of change, which occurs when readers or the broader social tissue interact with a new narrative, and this interaction results in the invalidation of previous experiences or expectations and can provide for new encounters and the definition of new horizons of expectation. So this is where we can find some hope in our ability, and this organization's ability, to create new productive narratives and collaborative situations. There are, of course, many elements that make it difficult for Slovenian scholars to return. The few jobs there are here in Slovenian academia tend to be taken by those that stay in Slovenia, and there's often not much interest in making space for those who might want to return. The point system, or točkovanje, that's the bureaucratic hurdle, or nostrification and getting your degrees, all of this bureaucratic stuff you need to get an excellent degree equated with a Slovenian degree. It tends to, all of those systems tend to favor older scholars rather than younger ones, and again, those that have remained in Slovenia rather than those that have left to acquire new knowledge and expertise. In certain areas, Slovenian academia is really extremely parochial, and sometimes this also means that people aren't going to want new voices or competitive voices to come into the departments. So I would also note that the fact that the current government of Slovenia has recently put in place new barriers to entry, not for returning Slovenian scholars, but for foreign students at all, is only going to make our university system and our schools less competitive and more parochial. So these questions are more important than ever. I remember once asking my late husband if it would be possible to create an international academic excellence in Slovenia. So, for example, to create a department like of cultural studies that would be one of the best in the world in terms of publishing and teaching and coming up with new ideas. And he said, no, it is absolutely impossible. Because, you know, Slovenia has managed to create excellence, certainly in the private sector and also on the individual level. So I was interested in his answer. And he said the main reason was not money per se, though that certainly always plays a part, but it was decisions regarding staffing and hiring, that there's simply too many bureaucratic hurdles for a department head to say, I want to do something special. I want to create excellence in Slovenia. So that was his feeling about the situation here. So regardless of all these barriers, organizations like yours will keep trying to change the horizons of expectations so that more Slovenians have a narrative to return to Slovenia if they want to, and to continue fostering an atmosphere that may one day make it possible to create excellence in Slovenian academia. Such changes, as always, require funding and opportunity. So I would finally like to remind you about the scholarship program in my late husband's name that is aimed at creating opportunities for successful collaboration between Slovenian scholars outside of Slovenia and scholars and institutions inside of Slovenia. In 2019, we established the Johnson Debeljak program for the return of Slovenian researchers from abroad. And I'm pleased to report that despite this dreadful intervening year of COVID and really destructive, or maybe even we could say self-destructive politics here in Slovenia, the program is still it still exists, it's still active, and it's still well-funded. So I urge you to use that opportunity to continue to search for collaborative opportunities here in Slovenia, because we need here in Slovenia more than ever, we need brilliant minds, we need independent scholars, and we need academic freedom. So in closing, I will read the most probably well-known quote about failure that almost makes failure seem inspirational, even heroic. The quote is from Samuel Beckett's story, Westward Ho. Ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better. Thank you.
Erica, yeah, you're welcome to stay with us. So, you know, like if any of the participants have any questions, please write them directly in the chat. In the meantime, we really appreciate, Erica, that you shared your personal story with us, and also that you shared your challenges. You know, like all of us who are moving to different countries or who are trying to establish these collaborations, we face various challenges, and it's important that we are aware of these challenges so that we can also, you know, then bring up these challenges to, you know, the government bodies who can then help us, you know, make changes, right, and make improvements. So we really appreciate that, and thank you also for bringing up, you know, like these like new funds that are in the name of your late husbands. It has been, you know, very successful program so far. It has already, you know, managed to help a few Slovenians return. And as you said, you know, this used to be very challenging, but I think people now recognize that, you know, it's important to, you know, also leverage that, you know, like the brain power that we have on the other side of transatlantic. And so that's also why we're trying to, you know, use this symposium to establish collaborations.
Okay.
Janina, so I see you are on the phone. Do you have any questions for Erica?
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yes.
Yeah, I have been a huge fan. I read your first book, Tujka Vakiši Domačinov, because I had almost at the same time when you moved to Slovenia, moved to US myself. Kind of we switched places in the world, you know. I married an American, you married a Slovenian, and we kind of swapped the places almost at the same time. So I know you were writing, and it's really, really impressive and very, very true. So resonates with me.
Thanks.
I think I still have a copy of that book 20 years later on my shelf.
It's hard to get.
Yeah, my mom's actually going to be sending me your new one. She really enjoys it. She said it's great. So I was really curious how you learned Slovenian so well.
Well, I
Because
don't.
my husband not learn his life.
Well, that's because I live here and he lives there. And as I said, I was lucky in a way that it was so difficult for me to do anything when I got to Slovenia because of it was a new country. And, I didn't, at the time, Slovenia had to figure out who was a citizen, who was not a citizen, what privileges immigrants had or didn't have. So they were working everything out. But so I went to it still exists. It used to be at a Filozofska fakulteta. It's the Slovenian language school. And I went for a year. I went 4 hours a day.
Yeah, maybe that's what you need to do.
I know. I also know a lot of non-Slovenians in Slovenia who never learn the language. And it's much harder now than it was then because everybody speaks English now, or virtually everybody. So it was helpful that was the case 30 years ago. And it was also helpful that Alesha's parents didn't speak English, so I was forced to speak really soon with them.
Sure.
It's hard. They say Americans don't speak languages well, but I don't think that's really true. But I bet your children don't speak Slovenian either, or do they?
They do understand, but they just did not grow up in an environment where other kids their age or who they would relate to would speak Slovenian. I had later met a lot of Slovenians in Arizona, and had that been at a different time, and they would be more able to play with other kids that spoke the language, I think it would have been different. But they grew up pretty much surrounded by English speakers, and then Spanish was a big part in Arizona, so they both started learning Spanish very early on.
It's much easier for me to have my kids speak English. Obviously, it's easier. English is the easiest language to. It's all of the cartoons and media and video games and everything. It's really effortless in that sense compared to the challenge you have.
And to your point, when we would come to Slovenia for extended periods of time, everyone was very eager to speak English with them. I actually was very sad to see that because I thought at that age they were still young enough and they still spoke, that they would go ask for ice cream, simple things, play with the neighbor's kids. But then as they saw that people are happy to speak English and showcase their English-speaking abilities, they kind of defaulted, obviously, to the easier option for them. So we just never really took off in terms of speaking English.
I remember a funny story when I used to take my kids to Disney movies here, and they were subtitled, and the little kids didn't speak English and they didn't read yet, and I was so irritated at the beginning because all of the Slovenian parents in the audience would be like just translating for the kids, or rather reading the Slovenian for the kids. It was so funny. That's not an issue anymore either, obviously. Sometimes when I'm asked to talk somewhere or something, and I start remembering the 1990s, it's so kind of sweet how different it was back then.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I also, in the chat, I shared with everybody a link to the Slovenian Research Agency, which has more details about this program that's named after the late husband of Erica, if anybody's interested in learning more about this. And we're also going to include this in other materials that we want to share with you. We also have a comment in the chat by Mrs. Metka Zupancic, who thanked you for your talk, Erica, and she actually said that she's actually one of the people who actually managed to return. So she said, I'm one of those who returned twice. First in the late 70s with a French doctorate to work at Filozofska fakulteta for 10 years. And then again, after a North American university experience of 28 years, she's now back in Slovenia as a retiree, having spent her life writing in other languages, English and French, mostly also prose. So she's also another writer who managed to go back and forth. Well, thank you very much, Erica. I think we're going to move on with the program so that we make sure there is enough time in the end for the participants to network with each other, and hopefully also with you, Erica, if you will be around, so people will be able to find you and talk to you. Thank you very much for sharing your stuff. Okay, so I will share my screen again, and then. So, in the previous symposium, we went in, we had like a full panel for about, like an hour where we discussed various funding mechanisms. So, we're not going to go into as many details now as last time, but I'm just going to quickly remind you of the various opportunities that are available. And then like all these slides that I'm going to show you, they will be available on the ASEF website. And I'm also going to put a link in the chat where you can click and follow if you want to find additional links, right? So I'm going to briefly comment various opportunities for both Slovenians and Americans, right? So so some of you may have heard of the Fulbright programs. So this is run by the U.S. and it provides opportunities both for the people from the U.S. citizens and also for the Slovenian citizens and other citizens around the world. For the U.S. citizens, there are two types of programs. One is the U.S. Scholars Program, which is meant for postdocs, primarily postdocs, but can also be it may be also available for more senior people. I'm not entirely sure, but you can find more information here. And then there's also like a exchange program for U.S. students, and similar programs also exist for non-U.S. Citizens. This would apply to Slovenian citizens. And there's like one program which is called Visiting Scholar Program, which is meant for postdoctoral students who want to do like research visits in the US, and also a visiting student program for like pre-doctorate students who want to do like a visit. And these visits are usually like, like up to 1 year. So they're like longer term visits, and they're fully funded. And they also provide funds for the family. Like if somebody has a family and want to move across to another country for a year, like this is all funds are provided. Then like the Slovenian Research Agency has like a special call, like which is like related to the bilateral cooperation between the US and Slovenia. So here, like if there's like a partnership between researchers in the US and researchers in Slovenia, they apply together. They apply together to this call at the Slovenian Research Agency. And then, like here is like a brief breakdown of what kind of costs are covered. But basically, like it will cover the transportation cost as well as the accommodations. And this applies both to the Slovenians traveling to US as well as people in US to travel back to Slovenia. And we already mentioned these funds that are named after, Mr. Johnson Debeljak, who are trying to encourage, early career Slovenian researchers to return back to Slovenia. And I shared the slide, the link with you also in the chat. Okay, so last time I also spent some time discussing special funds that NSF provides their grant awardees in order to increase collaborations between NSF and Europe. So basically, like it's trying to connect, grant awardees from NSF and grant awardees from ERC. And then NSF, if you have like an active NSF grant, you can actually request supplements for up to $20K in order to visit the collaborators in Europe, right? And just kind of to help you identify potential matches in Slovenia, I listed here, like all the Slovenians with active ERC grants. So, they're mostly in the fields of physics, chemistry, and engineering, but we also have like Marta Vergnella from the Faculty of Arts, so that there are other options too. Okay, last time I also mentioned the Human Frontier Science Program, which is actually not, between the US and Europe, but it's like a very international program, and it's focusing on the highly collaborative projects, like multidiscipline, multinational approaches that will provide that will advance the frontiers of our knowledge in the basic and fundamental science related to biological problems. like these are like, these can be 2 to the 5 members per team, which can give up to, $500,000 per dollar. Again, the bigger the team, the more you can request. Also, like they have like separate calls for the established people and for also junior investigators. And again, like you get like bonus points if you're coming from countries that are not as much represented. So, like if you, make a bridge between Slovenia and US, like that will be, that will count a lot because Slovenia is not highly represented, and you would get actually bonus points for that. And then, you can also make a team including other countries. Okay, last time I mentioned like a special call that was part of the Horizon 2020. It was part of bilateral program between the EU and the US, which now has actually ended. However, I left this slide because as part of this program, they created like a very detailed document, which you can access by clicking on this link, which provides a detailed descriptions of like all the US federal and non-federal funding agencies that can in principle also fund researchers outside the US, such as researchers in Slovenia. So like I really like urge you to like look at this document, and like you may be able to find other opportunities to promote funding of research between Slovenia and US. Okay, so maybe like a few other opportunities on the Slovenian side. So there's like a public scholarship fund from the Republic of Slovenia, which provides these Ad Futura scholarships. And then, like there are like different types of scholarships that are available. So there are some scholarships available to Slovenian students who want to study abroad. And, these can actually host also tuition and living expenses up to a certain amount. There are like special call there are special scholarships for Slovenian students who want to do short, like research visits abroad, like up to 10 weeks. And this was actually call was created by the initiative of ASEF, and so but it's open actually to everybody, and like not just Slovenians going to US, but also Slovenians going to other countries. And there's also like special scholarships for students of Slovenian descent who are living abroad but would like to, return to Slovenia and study in Slovenia. So these are like stipends that go both ways. So I also want to mention the American-Slovenian Education Foundation, which I'm part of. So we have like a special junior fellow program for talented Slovenian students. So this, junior fellows program was kind of motivated by, existing very well-established junior fellow programs in the US, like Harvard Junior Fellows, or in Oxford, in England. And basically the idea that, this is like a 3-year program where we really work with students to try to, promote their, professional development and personal development. And through part of this 3-year fellowship program, they also have an opportunity to go abroad and do research with Slovenian professors. And here we have like quite a long list of Slovenian professors in the US that are hosting these Slovenian students. And there's like another junior fellow program for Slovenia, so for students of Slovenian descent who are living abroad but would like to, like spend their summer internship and do their summer internship in Slovenia, learn the language, learn the culture, and also like, which will also help them in their professional development. So, like I try to keep these brief, but, you're welcome to, access the link that I shared in the chat, where you can find, where are all the links where you can find additional information. And in the end, I'll just mention that, like, as I said, this symposium was organized jointly between the US Embassy of Ljubljana and ASEF, and US Embassy actually provided like us some funds. And in the end, like, so now when the pandemic comes over, we're actually planning to have like a special call, which will like, provide like travel grants. And the goal is to promote new collaborations between the US and Slovenia. So the funding will cover transportation costs. It will, at least for now, I think the plan is not to cover local accommodation, but hopefully at least these transportation costs will help, will help defray some of the costs, so that we can at least, start moving in the right direction. So, as we said, similar calls, similar opportunities, funding opportunities exist through other agencies, but we hope that, this will not burden you and will be very low bureaucratic environment requirements, so that there will be an easy access to these travel grants, and which will advertise with all the participants on this symposium. And we plan to announce this call sometimes in the early fall of 2021, and then because we know that right now, even though pandemic situation is getting better, it's still very hard to plan the travel. But we hope that by the end of the summer, the situation will be a bit clearer, and it will be easier to plan forward when these visits could happen. So with this, I'm done with my brief, summary of the existing support mechanisms. But I'm welcome to, if there are any questions, please write them in the chat, and I'm happy to provide additional answers. And like I said, more information is available in the, PDF document that's basically a copy of what I was showing you here. And now I will turn the floor to Neža Vadnyal, who will give a brief presentation of another support mechanism, which is the Association of Slovenes Educated Abroad, which in Slovenian is usually referred to as Društvo Vtis, v tujini izobraženi Slovenci. So Neža, please, I'll stop sharing the screen, and you can start sharing your screen if you want to run the presentation.
While I do this, thank you to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to present Društvo Vtis. Can you see my screen? Wrong button. Can you see my screen now? Can you hear me and see my screen?
We hear you.
Do you see my screen as well?
We see your screen.
Okay, thank you. It's my first time using Wonder, so I'm not secure myself. But yeah, thank you for this opportunity to present Društvo Vtis, where I serve on the management board. Društvo Vtis, as Andrej has already mentioned, is an association of Slovenes educated abroad. So this includes Slovenes educated in the US, as well as in many other countries, such as, for example, myself. I am mainly active in the United Kingdom. So the purpose of our association is connecting and representing the interests of Slovene citizens who studied, are still studying, or are part of the research at an educational or research institution abroad. So kind of our mission is reducing the distance between Slovenia and the rest of the world. And we do this firstly by connecting our ambassadors of global knowledge in Slovenia and abroad. So by connecting our members and building this community of Slovenian scholars who were educated abroad. We also try to enable and encourage cooperation between Slovenia and abroad, such as in science, as well as in economics and in industry. And we put quite a lot of effort into drawing the attention of Slovenian policymakers to the problems and other obstacles that are actually not quite enabling the exchange of knowledge to the extent we think is possible between Slovenia and the rest of the world. So currently we are connecting over 1,860 members who are present in 51 countries of the world. So we try to achieve our goal by sharing the information and inspiration for Slovenian students to go and study or do research abroad. We want to support people on this journey while they're enrolling and stuff, as well as while they're in different countries. Part of this is also connecting our local communities and then connecting our members back with opportunities in Slovenia along with our partners. So we put quite a lot of effort into building our local communities. We do this through local events. This include we have quite a vibrant local community in the US as well. Of course, all of our events are currently online and virtual, but we do really hope we're going to get to meet in person very soon. But in the past, we've had events. Disco, potentially other places as well, with loads of interesting speakers.
Stop your screen.
Our member, we are also doing Sunday virtual coffee, where we bring together all our members from all over the world to just meet and build these connections in a network of other Slovenes.
Neja, just sorry to interrupt. Your screen stopped sharing.
Did it? Okay.
Yeah.
Completely.
Occasionally it throws you off. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna stop and do another method because I just did the share another tab, so maybe that's not working that well. I guess I'll just do the entire screen. Share. Do you see this?
Not yet. Okay, now it's coming. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, now.
Okay, so I've just talked about our local communities. I'm going to move on from here. We also organize quite a few different events that support, trying to support Slovenian scholars wishing to study abroad. These include pervities, where we share people who are just about to leave for their studies abroad. We share our experience with living abroad. We recently started this roadshop where we share experience and help on how to apply at university online with Slovenian high schoolers. And we just recently launched a quite successful mentorship program where our more experienced members share their experiences more at a one-on-one level with other members of our community. And this can be a lot of these include very particularly about, for example, returning to Slovenia or just collaborating with Slovenia. So finally, one of the big opportunities through which we try to connect our members abroad with Slovenia is by helping them find professional opportunities in Slovenia through our career days, which are normally in December, and they're held along with partner organizations in Slovenia, which are normally companies in the private sector. And quite a few of our members actually managed to find jobs through this program. Finally, we try to connect our communities to a digital platform, Slack, so our members can constantly exchange their knowledge, experiences, support each other. So again, any members present in the audience, if you have not joined us on Slack yet, do so, because I do think that this is a nice way to kind of have more experience or have others' experiences at the reach of your hand. And since and kind of one of our more academically orientated events that's quite traditional by now is a Symposium of Slovenian Research Abroad, which we organize traditionally in December. This year it was virtual, and at this symposium, Slovenian researchers that work at the institutions abroad present their work, while the chairs, as members of Slovenian community, the symposium is held in Slovenian, and we really hope this is a good opportunity to foster new collaborations or an exchange of knowledge between those of us who are abroad with the Slovenian research community. Finally, we try to bring our community together with a general assembly and a reception, which has traditionally been hosted by a Slovenian president. This happens each December, and it's another way how we're trying to connect our community. So this is just some statistics where our members are. Many of our members, as you can see, after studying and working abroad, have actually already returned to Slovenia. Quite a few of them are in the US. Potentially there are more potential members, and if some of you are in the audience, I'd like to encourage you to join us. However, all of our events are open to the public, so even if you cannot be a full member, I'd like to encourage you to follow us on social media, or join our mailing list and join our events to kind of become a part of this community. Of course, even if you're a bigger organization that you see opportunities to collaborating with us, please get in touch. Finally, as we are an association, we could not be doing our work without our partners that are generously supporting us, so need to acknowledge them. And thank you for your attention. Please get in touch if you see any opportunities of how we could foster these collaborations together in the future.
Thank you, Neža, for this brief introduction of the Association of Slovenes Educated Abroad. I'm personally also a member of that association, and I can attest that it's a wonderful support network where you can find like-minded people, especially in other countries. As we said, it's important to have this support network. So I also shared the link of the association in the chat in case anybody's interested, where you can find more information. So now, thank you very much, Neža. So now we're going to move to the next keynote presentation. Let's see. Okay, which will be given by Janina Golob Deeb, which you've already heard briefly. And so Janina Golob Deeb is a professor at Virginia Commonwealth University. And now she will share her story with us, how she got to where she is now and how she also established, collaborations between the US and Slovenia. So Janina, please, floor is yours.
Hey, Andrei, I'm just trying to figure out the screen sharing.
Okay, so there should be at the bottom of your screen, you see a camera, and there's an arrow with a box.
Yeah,
so that's,
I think I got it. Okay. Everyone can see and everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Good afternoon to everyone, or good evening from Slovenia. I would like to thank Asef, Andrei, and D.M.D for their invitation to speak at the studio conference about my collaborative experiences between the US and Slovenia. It's an honor to follow Mrs. Erika Johnson Debeljak. I've been a big fan of hers, and also a nice presentation about Društvo Vtis, which I also tried to participate with. I have spent my formative years in Slovenia. I owe the country my education, happy and safe childhood, many good friends, family, and memories. I attended Gimnazija Bežigrad in Ljubljana, received a degree in dental medicine from University of Ljubljana, completed my mandatory internship, received a license to practice dentistry, and my dental career in academics started then as a young researcher in Ljubljana. Already during dental school, I like to travel. I worked abroad. I participated in research and student exchange programs through Erasmus and university. Along the way, I was fortunate to have been mentored by formidable people and have felt the duty to pay these experiences forward if the opportunity would ever be given to me. The last fellowship exchange in Oregon led me to apply to the residency at Oregon Health Science University and to continue my education in the US. I completed the residency in periodontology, master's in science in oral molecular biology, along with the required exam boards necessary to obtain license to practice dentistry in the USA. Much like Erika, it's also very difficult for foreign trained dentists to come from abroad to the United States, and the process of becoming licensed in the United States takes somewhere between 2 or 3 years and is getting more complicated or lengthier each year. So during that time at OHSU, I was also able to facilitate an exchange for 2 oral maxillofacial surgery residents to be hosted by the OMFS department in Ljubljana. Andrei asked me or reminded me to talk about all my collaborative experiences, not just ASEF. So I had to reflect all the way back, and were actually some early experiences which I had kind of forgotten about, but they really were the seed that started this collaboration back then. Both these surgeons in training spent 4 weeks in Ljubljana, and those ties started forming back then. This was, I guess, my first form of collaboration some 22 years ago. Once I finished my training at OHSU, I worked as a practicing periodontist, first in the Pacific Northwest in various practices for about a year, and then another 12 years in Tucson, Arizona. Back here, again, I reflected on my collaborations. I was in private practice, but I did host a young dentist from Slovenia for 2 months, allowed shadowing and professional growth with clinical practice. So that was another form of collaboration back then. In those years, also dental school in Ljubljana generously hosted a few lectures for my husband and myself over the years. And I had several colleagues come visit me in Oregon and also in Tucson, dentists from Slovenia. So after 12 years in beautiful Arizona, you can see some pictures here from Sonoran Desert, which was very kind of my backdrop where I hiked, and Lake Powell with just gorgeous boating and water, and Antelope Canyon. We had moved to Richmond, Virginia. In 2013, I started as an assistant professor at Virginia Commonwealth University School of Dentistry. And since then, I've been promoted to an associate professor, and I direct the predoctoral periodontics program in our department. Dental school at VCU is part of a large university established back in 1838. It has a large urban campus, very similar to the University of Ljubljana. It's kind of intertwined in the city. It has many professional programs and schools, large, diverse student body. We even had a Slovenian golf player as a student 3 years ago. And as such, the university, of course, encourages exchanges and fosters collaborative effort. So the support of the university is there on all levels, which I think is the first key for success. Our School of Dentistry also has a long storied history. It started as a division of Medical College of Virginia back in 1854, and it was then inaugurated as a dental program in 1897, so 120 years ago. We enroll about 100 students each year. Since it's a 4-year program after college, that totals about 400 students, and about 55 to 60 dental residents that are trained each year, with some research track students in MS and PhD programs as well. So Richmond is only 100 miles from Washington, D.C., where there is a beautiful Slovenian embassy that puts on many great events to promote Slovenia, to promote the collaboration between U.S. and Slovenia. And Slovenians who live in USA, especially nearby, like myself, are always invited and do come and participate in these events. If I possibly can, I attend these events, and I have on several occasions brought with me also visiting students and fellows who really cherish those moments and with much pride attended those events. So back in 2015, I have attended one of these events where there was a lecture given introducing ASEF. The concept was very close to my heart, so I got involved. And almost at the same time, we were also initiating a foreign exchange program for dental students between VCU and University of Ljubljana Dental School, which was kind of similar to the Erasmus program that exists in Europe. So it all kind of started a year after that, 2016 and 17. In 2016, my husband was also a faculty at VCU, and myself took the first 3 exchange students, so 2 were dental students, 1 was a resident, for a 2-week exchange to University of Ljubljana. Here at VCU, we had a lot of interest for this exchange program, so it was pretty selective process to get the students selected. We had more applicants than we could take with us. And while we were in Slovenia, the interest also sparked among the Slovenian students to come to VCU. We had presentations, introduced our program, interpersonal connections, forums. They are used to going on exchanges all the way to Israel and all over Europe. So, of course, US was interesting for them. So in 2017, the first 2 students came to VCU. One came through ASEF. She was also my first ASEF exchange student, or a fellow, ASEF fellow, and the other student came through a student exchange program. So how did we structure these programs? To begin with, we charted a new territory with these collaborations and exchanges. Although these exchanges do exist in US, in that Erasmus program, they're not well established and structured between US and Slovenia. And we had to sign bilateral agreements between universities, which was very lengthy, and a lot of lawyers were involved on both sides of universities. We had to put a curriculum together for the both sides. And so the dental students usually spend 2 to 3 weeks on exchange, 2 for for American students going to Slovenia, and 3 for the Slovenians coming to us. We structured schedules to include clinical rotations, preclinical labs, didactics, seminars. Of course, all these activities require effort from numerous faculty members to include the students, to instruct them, to make their experiences meaningful. So we have been fortunate on both sides that the students are well received and included in all these activities. Also activities outside of their curriculum. Curricula are structured on both sides very similarly. They're intended to provide the students with a wealth of experiences in as many as possible aspects of dental education to give them a really broad exposure in a short time. Some experiences are also unique, which makes these exchanges more interesting, and we always like to point that out. Like, for instance, when they come to VCU, they like the more general dental clinic model. They like the off-site rotations that go to underserved areas and serve populations in need in these clinics in the suburbs or remote areas. And our American students that come back from Ljubljana really enjoy visiting the laser company Fortuna. They generously spend a day there. Fortuna hosts them and allows them to work hands-on. They also like our elementary school dental clinics model that Slovenia has. These dental clinics in elementary school, so all children are taken care of through that network of clinics. So there's just a couple of things that always come brought up by students that notice the few differences. Other than that, the structure is very similar on both sides. While the student exchange program, maybe one more thing, that they also are supposed to do a presentation on their countries and their dental education when they are there, and this gives broad exposure to the other students, so that kind of nurtures the interest into the program for the next class, for the next generation. And our American students also, upon return, have to do a presentation on their experiences and visits. So while the student exchange programs are well supported by the university, and I get a lot of help from our administrators and people that are responsible for these exchanges, ASEF is kind of mostly my exchange, or it's mostly me. So the way I structured or restructured the ASEF program is a bit different than the one for the dental students. These ASEF fellows that come are usually already dentists, so they have just finished or finishing up the dental degree. There's more focus on research. If they are in clinic, they like to spend time in a specific specialty that they're interested in. They stay longer, they stay 2 months. So we have seen some individual variation based on availability and obligations, but in general, their stay should be aimed to a longer stay, 6 to 8 weeks. The goal for the fellows, ASEF fellows, is to complete a research project. And my personal goal for them is always to present and publish this research and the findings. This helps them get along in their career when they're competing for specialty training positions and for junior faculty in their promotion. So my goal for them is always to find an interesting topic for research that will engage them and keep them engaged and interested. The project should ideally implement their knowledge and skill set that they already have. And also it has to be completed, designed, completed, and mostly concluded in the short time that they are here. I have several fields of research, and with the foreign fellows, it is challenging to find a short project that does not require a clinical license, access to HIPAA protected data, which is mostly all patient information, an IRB, participation in clinic, because again, they're limited with a license and with the HIPAA and all these privacy rules. So therefore, I involve them mostly on benchtop and simulation projects. We want to make sure these projects are exciting, that they provide them with new knowledge. And luckily, most dentists are excited about implants and laser. So they are excited to learn more about guided implant placement and lasers in dentistry. And you can see here that the yellow boxes outline the projects that ASEF fellows were involved with. One fellow here that is not ASEF is faculty from Poland. She has also spent 3 months with me, and she was kind of recommended to me by a colleague that we both share in common from University of Ljubljana Dental School as well. So she now collaborates with our ASEF fellows in Ljubljana in several projects as well. So you can see the laser and navigating or guided surgery, mostly all on simulated typodont heads. So we quickly observed what are the necessary ingredients for success. I think the key is support from the institution or from the university. And I think my key partner and key to success in Ljubljana has always been the support from faculty there, and then also support from the School of Dentistry here at VCU. I have a close friend and my closest collaborator, Professor Dr. Cifer. She's now the chair of the Department of Prosthodontics. She herself has spent some time in the US and understands the systems on both sides. We share similar values, similar philosophy, and similar work ethic, because all these exchanges are a lot of work. And it is very important to make things work and go smoothly, to have a dependable collaborator on the other side. I would point out here that also bilateral enthusiasm and hospitality on both sides is the key. We found that when students get together outside of school and make social connections, that makes these visits more memorable, and they promote it down to junior students who then become interested in these exchanges, and it's kind of a self-perpetuating process. We have also discovered that making interesting trips out of school keeps students very involved and engaged. Both Ljubljana and Richmond are attractive locations with a lot of nearby attractions. So we try to make their schedule such that there is time to be able to see these locations and make trips. On the collaborative scale, we found that, or I find that continuously engaged relationship, which is fostered by the common project, is also the key to success to sustain this collaboration. Everyone gets excited about positive outcomes and visible results. So the key is to keep both sides engaged and involved, and to find projects that on both sides the faculty can and mentors can be involved in them. And of course, then to publish and present the research is the ultimate goal. So we nurture the sense of accomplishment for all the involved parties. So you can see here, everyone is excited when we get our abstracts or manuscripts accepted and presented at large meetings. These venues you can see are large international meetings, and we're featuring on these posters authors and logos from both institutions, PCU and University of Ljubljana, and students, mentors, and faculty on both sides. You can also see here the list of abstracts with ASE fellows in red, and listed as authors are, again, mentors from both institutions, Ljubljana and PCU. And that's also the case with our manuscripts, we have already published with ASE fellows, and some that are still in progress, either in revision or being submitted. So in total, between ASEF and exchange program, we have had 19 students that have benefited from these collaborative educational exchange programs. We have hosted 4 Slovenian ASEF fellows and one Polish faculty fellow who has been referred by a Slovenian colleague at VCU. I'm not going to say most, but I was very excited to facilitate the visit of one of our VCU residents who has a Slovenian background and a strong sense of Slovenian heritage. And he was able, with the help of ASEF, go to visit or to do an exchange ASEF fellowship at the University of Ljubljana, and really cherished that experience. That was very exciting and contributed to him getting a resident recognition award. Further, we also have faculty members that have visited bilaterally, and every time there is a visit, they also do a lecture to the faculty and students at the institution they're visiting or we are visiting. I was also one of those. There is interest for more to come, hopefully, when these COVID restrictions are lifted. And like I said, Andrei told me to kind of touch upon all collaborations, and what came to mind too is another form of collaboration, which is combining personal and professional interests. My husband likes to climb, and when he's in Slovenia, he does a lot of mountain trips, and we were both involved kind of as a side professional hobby with Wilderness Medical Society, where we were teaching dental skills courses for dental emergencies in severe conditions. So through a common acquaintance, we connected with an ER resident in Jesenice, who was also a mountain rescuer in Slovenia. We had a medical student with a similar interest here at VCU, and we created a project that resulted, as you can see, in a couple of presentations and a publication on mountain search and rescue operations in Slovenia. Other professional collaborations are also professional meetings in Slovenia or near vicinity that one can attend either passively as an attendee or speak. Passive, we usually meet a lot of people there. We maintain contact, stay current with what's going on and what are the present opportunities for collaborations. And we have also been honored with a few invitations to be active participants and to present at some Slovenian meetings in our field. So to summarize, successful collaboration is really a labor of love and devotion. What keeps the parties engaged on both sides are common projects that help develop and foster the collaboration. In our experience, having a fellow from Slovenia and a US resident student on the same project helps promote the research in both rounds and ensures a broad presentation opportunities on both sides and meetings on both continents. It helps mentors on both sides stay connected and working for a common cause. And students, faculty, and institutions all benefit from this skills sharing. New skills are being developed and brought to the institutions, new knowledge, new perspective, and new opportunities for everyone involved. We did encounter some challenges, which mostly were technical in nature. Signing the documents, creating these bilateral agreements took a lot longer than I would have ever predicted. Finding suitable timeframes for our exchanges, coordinating our student schedule that has pretty much year-round clinical duties, then finding faculty who might be on vacation or at a meeting or at a training, and especially with these dependable collaborators, you want to make sure they are around for your students or visiting that institution so that things run smoothly and somebody's always there for them. And then when the clinics are closed, especially around May and December in Slovenia, which is where our students would like to go, it's not possible. And holidays that don't always overlap in both countries. The other question or challenge we had is how many is an ideal number of students. We first discovered that 2 is better than 1 because they help each other and can do things together. And we thought maybe more than 2 is better, but we found that a larger group doesn't immerse as well with the host students. So we kind of settled that 2 is probably an ideal number, 2 to 3, to connect with domestic students and to be able to depend on each other for resources. To overcome these challenges, one has to be willing to pick up all of the missing pieces, which are transports, airport pickups. I sometimes drive to DC and back to pick up the students, drive them around, loan them my car to be able to go and see attractions nearby, arrange housing for students. Particularly, we found that in Ljubljana, for them to be housed in Oražni Dom, which is great location, affordable pricing, and they don't need a car, we sometimes have to book it 6 to 8 months in advance, so it's not available. Our housing here in Richmond is close to the university, but lacks infrastructure like a grocery store and great public transportation. So we kind of have challenges on those sides, and as mentor in charge, kind of you have to be able to remediate that and help students resolve all sorts of challenges when they are visiting here. However, all that is worth it because benefits of the student exchanges and collaborations are really numerous and very rewarding for all parties involved. It broadens the perspective. It makes people appreciate the differences and similarities and perhaps even get ideas to improve things in their own workflow and institution. Certificates and letters of recommendation. I just this year have received, I think, 3 or 4 requests to generate certificates and letters of recommendations for my former exchange students that are now applying for graduate specialty programs in Slovenia. As I said, there was one student here that got an award, and it was a recognition for doing something innovative and interesting in their training program out of the box. Junior faculty gets points for promotion, first from the exchange abroad, but also for the scholarly activity we do, so posters, abstracts, papers, and it does help with people being able to distinguish themselves with an experience that it's not ubiquitous. So overall, this has been a very rewarding experience for me, and I have learned something from each and every visit of these collaborations, from the individuals that have visited and from the projects we did, and really can't wait to continue on with that when the circumstances return to normal. Thank you.
Thank you, Janina, for sharing your wonderful story, and also thank you for sharing lots of practical advice about how to make such exchanges possible. Can you also, you also discussed some of the challenges, how hard it was to establish this bilateral agreement. I can imagine one of the obstacles is also financial, right? So can you comment, how, maybe how did you manage to convince both universities to, contribute, and what do they actually contribute financially in order to support these exchanges?
Yeah, that's a great question. See, 15 minutes trying to squeeze it all in. I left that out, but actually that's a great point. So I also write a lot of letters. Aptitude, I think, is the agency in Slovenia where I write a lot of the letters to invite the students, and then when they have completed their exchange, they usually need a letter that confirms that they indeed were here and what they did in that time. So I now have a generic letter that I kind of customize for each student, and they seem to be happy with that because they are continuing to get funding. So that's for the Slovenian students. They get usually their entire trip paid for by that little grant that they get. Our students here, we have also a Quest Global Grant that our dean and Quest is some sort of a funding entity here at VCU, devoted some funds to, and they do, and they are able to give them, their flights are paid for. I'm not entirely sure if the housing is paid for, and then when you do come to Slovenia, they actually get the student food coupons like our students get, and here our housing, which is also very affordable, we're talking about maybe $25 to $30 per night on both sides. So that's usually times maybe 15 days or however long they stay. But there is actually food provided because it's kind of like a clinical, or however you would call it, it's like Ronald McDonald type of housing. In America, that's more common, where they also host families of people that are in long-term treatments here. So there is food being donated from all sorts of different agencies and organizations. So students actually have more food than they can eat here. So the flights are usually covered with that. The housing depends, I'll say. And the meals, I'm not certain.
Thank you. So if I understand, you managed to leverage the existing funding mechanisms to try to support these trends.
Yeah. And with ASEF fellows, I think they had most of their expenses paid. So through ASEF. And that was true bilaterally for the American going to Slovenia and with Slovenians coming to US.
Right. And you mentioned there were also some exchanges of the faculty between the universities. So, and how did they get supported?
So, that again varies individually. I think it's about half and half. Even when I look at my husband and myself, I kind of didn't get support from my department, but for my flight, his department paid for it, so we had the support. Maybe because the resident was from their department, just kind of individually based. If we go there to lecture, that's usually covered. If we go there to a meeting, we can write off some expenses because of the continuous education. So my colleagues that have come here, I think one of them had sponsorship from probably one of these agencies. Another one came, I think, in the personal arrangement financially, and then did a lecture here. So I don't think there is one, module how we do it. It's just if there is interest and people want to foster this relationship, they'll find a way. And sometimes you'll find the resources, and sometimes you'll have your own resources, and that keeps it going. And I've had it both ways, but to keep it going, sometimes you have an opportunity to have a resource, and the other time it won't. So.
Thank you. Okay, that's good to know, because finances are always usually an issue when these bilateral agreements are coming in place. So it's good to know how you manage to solve this on your side, so that we are aware when we try, if somebody else tries to establish this with their universities. So thank you very much, Janina, for this presentation. So with this, we will conclude the initial part with presentations. And now we're actually going to switch to the networking part among participants. So, like the main feedback we got from the first symposium is that, participants really, appreciated all these presentations, but they wanted to have some more time to also network with each other. So here, just to kind of ease the interaction between the participants, we created a few different areas on this WonderMe map, where you can more likely find participants with similar interests. Again, you can also consult with this Google spreadsheet, which contains information about all the registered participants and their research interests, if they were willing to share it with you. So you can consult with this. And then just to make sure that everybody knows how to operate WonderMe, I'm just going to briefly play the YouTube video, which is going to explain everything, and then we're going to stop the broadcast, and you're going to be able to network among yourselves.
This is everything you need to know as a guest. When you first enter a Wonder Room, to move is really simple. All you have to do is click and hold, either on your mouse or your trackpad, and your avatar is going to follow wherever your cursor is on the screen. To open up a circle, just get close to another avatar, let go, and now we see a circle starting to form. Hey, Michael. Andrew. If you look at the arrows at the top left of the screen, you can click these and then switch to full screen view. If you click them one more time, you will then go back to room view. Now, you can also have up to 15 people inside one circle, and you can share your screen inside of a circle. One person can share their screen at a time. Just look at the three icons at the bottom center of the screen. You click the screen inside of the window here, and now I am sharing my screen. If we now look at the sidebar at the right of the screen, the first option is participants. Now within participants, you can see the people that are close to where your avatar is in the room. You can also then see every single avatar that is in the room. Now, if I just leave my cursor over Michael's name here in the participants view, we have this magnifying lens view of where he is in the room. So now I can leave my cursor over his avatar. I'm just hovering over, and we see a pop-up window. We see his name, we see the response to his icebreaker question, we can send him a private message, and we can also invite him to a circle. So when Michael then clicks accept invite, we see that he's been transported to where I am inside of the room. Now, in a Wonder Room, there are three ways of chatting. So now we're looking at the chat icon underneath participants. You can send a message to a circle. You can also send a private message, and you can also send a message to every single person in the room. Thanks, Michael. All right. If we look at the settings icon here, you can change your name. You can retake your screenshot, your selfie. You can also upload a picture if you do not want to use a selfie. Press update, and this will be saved. Under video and audio controls, you can change your video and audio input sources. So if you have an external camera or microphone or have another webcam inside of your device, you can then change this here. Now, if we look at the plus and minus sign at the left of the screen, you can click the plus sign to zoom into exactly where your avatar is in the room. And if you click the minus sign, you will zoom out to see the room in its entirety. There you have it. That's all you need to know as a guest.
Okay, so hopefully this was useful, and now you'll be able to practice this yourself by navigating around the map. So again, initially probably you will be quite zoomed in and you will just be able to see your circle. But if you zoom out by either using the minus sign in this corner that was mentioned, or just scrolling with your mouse, then you'll be able to see these various areas which can maybe help you identify other participants with similar interests. I also shared a document in the chat where you can find additional information about participants. So with these, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and then I'll also ask Erica to please stop the broadcast. And then once we all end the broadcast, then participants will be able to, move around the map and then interact with each other. So, the rest of the symposium is really devoted to your networking. And if you're still around at the end of the hour, not this hour, but like another hour, then I'm going to have some concluding remarks. But, I hope you enjoyed these presentations. And now I hope that you'll be able to find, like some other participants who share, similar interests as yourself. So enjoy the networking, and I'll be in touch again with you. And then, please take this opportunity to also introduce yourself to others. And I hope you will be able to find some connections. Happy networking.